This covers a murder that occurred in Arcadia, Florida in 1980. As always, everyone is innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. So I did my share of fishing as a kid. We had a boat, a couple boats actually, and when we were young, we went boating almost every weekend. But we were not live off the land or sea or creek or lake types of boaters. For my family, catching a fish and eating it was more of a novelty than a way of life. And we certainly didn't fish to fill our freezer. The folks out in Arcadia, Florida, at least the folks we're going to meet this season, fished and hunted to eat. It wasn't a novelty to them. But that kind of fishing and hunting, well, it takes some effort. Effort like stopping early in the morning before a 10 or 12-hour shift to drop some trout lines, or trot lines, as I've learned that they're called. Our group of Arcadians that this story will follow, well, they were a tight-knit group that did things like fishing and hog hunting and the sorts of things that you and I might not be familiar with. But tight-knit as it applies to these folks might also be, well, let's just say tight enough that it could lead to murder.
What did you hear happened? What do you know happened?
That Merritt was found floating in Horse Creek, and he had been bludgeoned to death, and that he was wrapped in his bed sheets and his blanket and thrown in the creek, naked. Then one time I was told he was naked one time he had on his underwear. But Merritt slept in his drawers.
Yeah.
Because every time I was over there and he had gotten up, he'd always had on briefs.
Every time.
I've never seen him be nasty at nobody.
No. He was always everybody's friend. He was.
And when he got to drinking, that's why with the drinking bit, whenever he got to drinking, and he drank beer, never saw him drink anything but beer.
He didn't drink nothing beer.
And when he drank his beer, he'd get very loving and mellow type. You know, he wasn't obnoxious at all.
It's obvious, I guess, that Pete and Merritt had some problems.
Oh yeah, they fought like cats and dogs.
Pete is Connie's brother, and the whole neighborhood knew how much Pete and Merritt disliked each other. They did not get along, to the point of multiple physical altercations between the two.
Other than Pete, was there anybody else that Merritt would have had a problem with?
I never knew Merritt had a problem with nobody.
No.
Other than just him and Pete couldn't get along. I mean, he tried to get Pete to work. Pete wouldn't work. Lay up at the house all the time, and then he'd go steal stuff.
He'd steal his stuff. After Merritt worked off his son of a bitch, Pete would steal his stuff out of the barn, you know, and go pawn it or go sell it. And then he'd beat him down. He'd beat him down, and then he'd go do it again. And that he got so upset about it because he kept doing the same thing over and over again, and he was such a druggie. And he was just go from neighbor to neighbor to neighbor stealing. And Merritt tried to play daddy to Pete.
What about Merritt's hunting habits? Would he go just hunting any night, or did he just wait and go on the weekend?
Oh no,
He hunted every night.
He was game.
Everybody went every night.
Well, the area he was killed, I understand, is like an old party spot. That wasn't necessarily someplace you
Ain't
went.
a hunting.
That would be someplace you could
They
picnic.
coached. They went down Lily Gray. The same thing they're doing today. They didn't
didn't actually hunt.
Same thing they're doing right now today is exactly the same thing.
Okay.
The CMI owns it today, where back then they run from the cattlemen. It's the only difference. And then, of course, gophers wasn't illegal then, and they'd go out and get 50 of them and have a big gopher fry or soft-shell turtle or... I remember one time that they went and stole somebody's Muscovy ducks. They built them. I never forget it. Merritt was in on that too. They cleaned them old ducks and they built them a smokehouse, and we smoked them, and we all like to die from food poisoning. Have you ever smoked a Muscovy duck with all that grease coming out of it? To this day, I can't stand smoked meat. But they did. Somebody down the road had a whole pen of Muscovy ducks, and they started everyone. They stuck them in hot water and plucked all the feathers off. Right in Ronnie's yard over there.
Oh my God, can we please take a minute to appreciate that scene? The Muscovy duck is the only domesticated duck that's not descended from mallards, and they aren't really water ducks like other ducks. They have claws that are larger than the average duck and a big extra claw on the hind of their feet because they're actually perching birds, so they prefer to roost. That big claw helps them to grip a roosting site, and I'm told that they like to roost in lofts and trees. So here we are already in Stephen King territory with clawed ducks hanging in trees. But perhaps the most terrifying is the fact that they don't quack. They sort of burble and hiss. They're supposed to be good eating when they're young, more like veal than duck. So just picture it. We've got a couple neighbors stealing a gaggle of ducks from some poor unsuspecting duck owner, which means they've somehow managed to corral and cage the lot of them. Transport the hissing ducks to Ronnie Dryman's yard, where he, and others, I presume, proceed to dunk each one in hot water, pluck them clean, and then cook their burgled ducks. Sweet heavenly Jesus, the absolute visual carnage of that scene. Plucked feathers everywhere, not to mention whatever noises that the Muscovy ducks make when they know their end is nigh. Aren't you guys wondering how they season them? It was probably great for about 20 minutes. People brought side dishes maybe. They're sitting around the picnic tables, the whole neighborhood happy with their pile of barbecued duck. Everybody's digging in, smiles on their faces, glistening with grease under the hot Florida sun. But those Muscovy ducks had the last laugh. Perhaps because they hadn't been cooked long enough, who knows? It sounds like the whole neighborhood spent the night either hugging the bowl or sitting on it. I don't know about you guys, but I already like these people. And I want to know more about them.
What was the attraction out here, just getting away from the city?
You could buy 5 acres of land for $100 and like $50.
I paid $100 down and $78 a month for this 5.6 acres right here.
And you paid
$11,500 is what I paid for it.
I paid $7,500 for 5 acres. That was what the attraction was. Come out here and bought that and cleaned the property off and moved out here and starved to death for a year. We all did. We all pulled together and hunt and have cookouts in the afternoon, have something to eat. We fed everybody like we were in the ration line. It was that bad.
On the day he was murdered in October of 1980, Merritt Ives Wheeler III spent about 11 hours out in the hot Florida sun pouring concrete. At the time, he worked for Perry Hoff Construction, and his boss, the aforementioned Perry Hoff, last saw Merritt around 6:30 that evening, when he left work for the day. But he spoke with him later that night around 8:30 to let him know that they'd be starting the next morning at 6:30. Construction jobs in Florida, well, they test the mettle of a man, and 36-year-old Merritt Wheeler was a rock. Big and tough, who cared about his family and enjoyed outside endeavors like hunting. Here's Perry Hoff, his former employer.
He was about 6'1", 6'2".
Stout.
He was slender, but he was muscular. He was built like a karate guy, just all muscle, because he worked. Yeah, he was a really, really good-hearted person. He wouldn't hurt a flea.
A friend of Merritt's named David Perry, not to be confused with Perry Hoff, his employer, saw Merritt Wheeler the night before he was murdered around 9:15. He'd gone over to Merritt's house earlier on that same evening, asking about a job. He wanted Merritt to try and get him one. While he was there, another friend named Bill Sane stopped by to ask Merritt if he wanted to go hunting with him that night. Merritt declined, which is something he didn't often do when it came to hunting. But that night he said he wasn't feeling good. When Merritt went over to David's house sometime after 9 that night to pick up some tools for work the next day, he told his friend that he had spoken to his boss on the phone and he got him a job. In fact, he could start the next day. So the two men arranged to meet at the construction office in Port Charlotte, Florida, the following morning. Before he left, David gave Merritt 2 soft-shell turtles as payment for helping him get the job. The next morning, David got up extra early because he wanted to go set trout lines out at the Fort Ogden Trestle on the way to work. He had enlisted Frankie and Willie Lamar, father and son, to help him set the lines. When Merritt's friend David Perry arrived at the construction company that morning at around 8:30, the secretary, Dorothy, asked him what he was doing there. He said Merritt had got him a job, and then asked, "Isn't he here yet?" She said no, he had not shown up for work yet, and that was odd for him because he was usually very punctual. Merritt's wife Connie had even called looking for him, just a few minutes before David walked in the door. As they stood there talking about it in the office, Connie Wheeler called again, and the secretary handed David the phone. "Merritt went out hunting last night," Connie Wheeler told him, "but he never came back." There was some talk about whether she should call the police, but David told her to hold off. The boss said that he didn't need him that day, so what he would do is he would head back down Kings Highway, where they usually hunted, and see if he could spot Merritt or his truck. David left the office around 8:40 or 8:45, driving slowly down Kings Highway, which eventually turns into County Road 769. When he got to the Horse Creek Bridge, David stopped on the north side where they usually hunted, but he couldn't find Merritt's truck. As David started across the Horse Creek Bridge to the south side, he spotted Merritt's truck parked down near the water. David turned around and went back to his truck, leaving the same way that he'd entered, then drove to the local farm store at the intersection of Highways 70 and 72 to call the sheriff's department from the payphone outside.
Stopped in there, and that's where I found his body in the... So then I went and called the sheriff's department, got them out there. And,
Do you remember if you went over to the house that evening?
Yes.
Do you remember what for?
To get him to get me a job.
Trying to get a job, okay. Do you remember if there was anybody else over there that night?
No.
Okay. Do you remember seeing Bill Sane, a friend of
Bill Sane came over when me and standing there talking.
Okay.
I want to know if he was wanting to go hunting that night.
Okay.
Says no.
All right.
He said, I'm tired, and he said, I got a lot of concrete for tomorrow. So
Okay. You talked to him about getting a job, and then you go home.
then I go home.
Okay. And then he...
He came over around about 9:30 somewhere.
Okay.
And got his tools and told me that he's ready to, he wants me to go to work that wood next morning.
Did you have something else you needed to do that morning?
Oh yeah, I carried, had my trot lines to run, but I carried, what's his name?
Was it the one that Connie
Frank,
used today? Okay.
yeah.
Frank and his dad?
His dad.
Willie.
Willie.
Frank and Willie.
And I carried them down there and dropped them off at the boat, and told to ask them if they'd run the trot lines for me.
Okay.
So yeah, they would.
Okay.
So I told him that he got me a job, and I was going to work for him for concrete, and see if he wanted to go down and run them trot lines. I was going to let him have all the fishing jobs. So that's when he got that Frankie up and told him, come on, because we're going to go run them trot lines.
Do you remember if Frank was already awake or not?
I don't think he would. I think he was asleep.
Okay. And you took him down and dropped him off. It was at the Fort Ogden Trestle?
Yeah.
For them to run your trot lines
Yeah.
for you. And then you drove to Port Charlotte to go to work.
Yeah.
And when you got down there, had not shown up for work. Connie called and
won't know if
showed
he
up.
showed up.
Okay, and that's when you said you'd backtrack and look where y'all used to go hunting. Had you hunted with before at that place?
Yep. 4 or 5 times we've been in there. We carry the dogs, and that's where we found where I found him. Wasn't where we parked at. We parked on this side of the bridge, south side. Pulled off there and went into the woods because we wasn't supposed to go back in there hunting. So we'd hide the truck.
On the south side.
Yeah. I looked in there. So when I went over the bridge, I seen a white truck sitting off in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's when I went in there, and I got over to the bank, and I seen a body laying there, and I seen it was up because it had his tools on the back of it. That's when I went and called the sheriff's department.
So even with this scenario that was given 25 years ago by Connie about going hunting, did you know him to ever park his truck side of the bridge?
No. No. It's always hid it on the south side.
Did typically poach, or did he ever have permission to hunt anywhere?
Mostly we just poached.
Poach. When poached, did he take great pains to hide his truck, or did he leave it parked out in the open?
No, he hid it.
He hid it. And this was not hidden. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't hidden.
Okay.
Pulled off into the water just about. Right off a bank. I know wouldn't pull off that bank. Why would he pull off in there knowing he can't get back out?
Why would go hunting in his underwear?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I just got a funny feeling he was killed and put there. Killed at home and put there. That's what I've always been.
After you called the sheriff's office, you had an opportunity to approach the truck a little bit closer with the deputy,
Yeah.
right? When you, and was the door open or closed? Let me ask you that.
The door was
The
open.
door was standing open. Did you see anything inside the truck?
Yes, I did. I seen a croaker sack filled with blood.
Did you look on the ground around the truck at all?
Yeah, I looked down on the ground. There wasn't no tracks. My tracks was the only one there when I backed off.
Mm-hmm. Did you see any drag marks down towards the water?
No drag marks.
Okay.
That's what I was looking for. Tracks and drag marks.
Did you see any blood?
Just blood on that thing, none on the ground.
None on the ground outside the truck.
Mhm.
And with the amount of blood that you saw on the inside of the truck, did you suspect that there should be blood outside?
It should have been blood outside if he was beat to death there.
Do you know if he had a gun?
Oh yeah, he had guns. He had a shotgun, he had a rifle. I know he had a shotgun and a rifle.
There's some indication in reading reports that shotgun was missing after this.
Yeah, Connie said it. He took the shotgun when he went hunting.
What do you think about that?
No, don't take no gun hunting.
And why is that?
It's against the law. It's against the law to go in there and get hogs, but still you don't get a charge.
But if you got a gun, right, if you got a gun, you
Yeah.
get charged more, right?
Yeah.
Okay, every good poacher knows that.
Yeah. You don't carry a gun in the woods, not when you're going in there getting them a hog. That's when you got these dogs. You can catch them alive and bring them out. And
Didn't take his dogs that night, according to Connie?
come think about it, I didn't. All I heard is he carried a
Took a
shotgun
gun, okay.
with no dogs.
Alright.
Wouldn't run in the hunt with a shotgun and no dogs.
Right,
He wouldn't have carried a shotgun anyway.
right. But he certainly would have not gone without the dogs.
No.
What good would it have been?
Yeah. What's he gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do, wander around with a
Yeah.
gun?
How's he gonna find the hogs to shoot them anyway?
Right, understood.
Yeah, that's my shit there.
The Horse Creek Bridge in Arcadia, Florida, is about 7 miles from where Connie and Merritt Wheeler lived in 1980. It was an area known by locals, although, according to friends who hunted with Merritt, only one side of that bridge was somewhere that he would have gone hunting, because the trees near one side of the bridge afforded a place to hide your vehicle. Merritt, like a lot of locals at that time, did a bit of poaching, which is essentially illegal hunting, and newspaper articles at the time show that law enforcement was heavily tracking poachers and areas known to be illegally hunted. It was not within the realm of possibility to those who knew him that Merritt Wheeler would have parked his white Ford pickup where it was found, facing the water on the side of the Horse Creek Bridge that was clearly visible from the bridge above. When his friend David Perry, and then later law enforcement, took that dirt 2-track down toward the creek, they would see the body of a white male clothed only in underwear. He was submerged in about 4 feet of water. There was blood inside the cab of the truck, including a puddle of blood on the running board of the driver's side, but no blood on the ground beneath the running board. Blood was observed inside the cab on the rear window. It had started to run straight down, then at an angle. There was a large smear of blood on the ceiling of the cab above the driver's side, as well as smeared blood around the ignition switch in a circular pattern, perhaps indicating that someone with a bloodied hand had turned the key in the ignition. The report notes that the pattern of blood spatter in the cab suggested it was flung from, quote, 2 different directions. There was a dark green, long-sleeved shirt observed in the cab of the vehicle, according to that report. The glove compartment was open, and there was blood inside. A small piece of burlap material with blood on it was lying in the center of the seat, and there was a large amount of blood between the end of the seat and the back portion of the seat, underneath that piece of burlap. There were observable drag marks in the sand leading from the driver's side of the truck into the water. A complete search of the area was made, but police were unable to find any other clothing, like pants, for example, or a weapon. Also, not a single mention of vehicle prints. The fact that Merritt was found partially dressed in combination with the blood evidence in the vehicle suggested to police that he was attacked elsewhere and driven to the area where he was found. But from the description of the blood itself, without seeing the images, it sure sounds like some of the attack occurred inside that vehicle. Otherwise, how does blood get on the ceiling and, quote, slung from 2 different directions? Police also reported finding no signs of a struggle at the scene. The notes from the autopsy report done at Sarasota Memorial Hospital state that he had multiple lacerations of the head and face, fractures of the skull and sinuses, laceration and hemorrhage of the brain, pulmonary edema, and abrasions over the sacrum and left hip. The report reads, quote, "The injuries to the head and central nervous system could have been fatal, but were not necessarily immediately fatal. The findings of some redness in the trachea, pulmonary edema, and aquatic vegetable matter in the bronchus suggest the victim was alive when placed in the water. The injuries were made by a relatively blunt instrument. He was struck both from the front and the back with something definitely more than a fist. The body had cooled essentially to the temperature of the creek, and therefore body temperature was not helpful in determining time of death." So in summation, someone beat the shit out of Merritt Wheeler and then tossed him alive into the water.
Okay, the tape recorder is going. Today is Wednesday, October the 29th. That's 1980. Present are myself, Kurt Siver, investigator for the State Attorney's Office, and Connie Sue Wheeler. All right, Connie, how long have you and Merritt been married?
Next month it'll be 8 years.
Okay. During this period of time, this 8 years you were married, did you all separate any?
Yes.
How many times?
Three times.
All right, Connie, let's just take the last time. When did you separate the last time?
The last part of March I left him.
Okay, when did you all get back together?
This is going on the 3rd week.
This is the 3rd week?
Uh-huh.
I hate to ask you these personal questions, but I have to, okay? What was the reason that you all were separated?
Well, when I, like I said, I left him 3 times, and the problem that why I was leaving him was because, our sexual relationship that we had,
wasn't satisfying. All right. During this time that you were separated from him, was you staying with, or going with someone else, Frankie Lamar?
Mm-hmm.
Was he part of the reason that you all separated?
Uh-uh.
How long had you been seeing Frankie Lamar?
Well, I was seeing him for about 6 months, 5 to 6 months. I used to drive Willie up there to see Frankie, and I went up there to the prison to see him, too.
Okay, so, when was this? Back when?
About 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 or 3.
Were you going with Frankie at this time?
No, we wrote back and forth to each other because, he said that he needed someone to write to him, and I said, well, all right, and I said that I'd write to him, and, Merritt knew I was going up there and with it. Well, going up there with Willie, and, Merritt, he knew I was writing to him, and Merritt asked me, why we were writing back and forth, and I said he needed someone to write to, and, it was just like It was just, on a friendly basis that I was writing to him.
Just strictly friendship then.
Uh-huh.
So nothing was going on at this time
No.
between you and Frankie.
No, I didn't have no relationship with him, no.
When did he get out of prison?
December, I think.
In December, okay. Of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what he was put in prison for?
No.
All right. When he got out, did you start seeing Frankie?
No, he was over to his dad's a couple times, and I saw him over there, and then one night, we went up to the store to get some milk and some bread for Willie's daughter, and Willie came up there and said that Merritt was out in the woods with a shotgun, and he was going to kill me and Frankie, and I didn't sound that didn't sound like Merritt, and so I was scared, and I didn't go. I didn't go home. I left that night.
When was this? Back in March?
Uh-huh.
This was when you left him?
Mm-hmm. And, Frankie and me went to Tinsley's that day, and Frankie was talking to Merritt, and, Frankie asked Merritt, Frankie told Merritt that's why I left, and Merritt told him that was a lie, he wasn't out there.
Who told you Frankie was out there with a shotgun?
Frankie wasn't out there with a shotgun.
I mean, Merritt was out there, excuse me. Who told you that Merritt was out there with a shotgun?
Willie did.
Willie, okay. Was there any more things like this that happened?
No, Merritt said that, and I said, Merritt, that's the only reason I left you. I said, 'cause you were out there with that gun. Early on, police spoke with Merritt's mother, Dorothy Wheeler. She confirmed that she had spoken to her son the night before his body was found. She had asked him to come over, but Merritt told her he did not feel well, so he was going to bed. He had worked overtime that day and had to be up early the next morning, but he promised to come by and see her the next day after work. She also told them that a few days before her son was killed, he told her, quote, "If for some reason I become missing or I'm found dead, don't leave my rock unturned, because it won't be an accident." It was at this point that Merritt's mother told police that she was in possession of love letters that her son had given her to keep, letters between Merritt's wife Connie and Frankie Lamar, a neighbor who lived with his father, Willie Lamar, across the street from the Wheelers. Connie and Frank Lamar had written to each other while he was in prison. Merritt found these letters, and subsequently he gave them to his mother for safekeeping. Merritt's mother told police that it was common knowledge that there were obvious hostilities between Merritt and Frankie and Willie Lamar.
Connie, let me show you something. Do you recognize this?
Uh-huh.
Now, I haven't read all these letters. I got them from Merritt's mom the other morning. Merritt apparently took them over there sometime and gave them to her and told her to keep them in case something ever happened to him. And from looking through these letters, Connie, and the way they are, sounds to me like you and Frankie had something going a little more serious than you told me.
Well, wait now. I didn't see Frankie until March when I left that night. I used to go up to the prison and see him, but I didn't have no relationship with him.
But when he got out of prison you did, didn't you?
I didn't have no relationship with him until after I left Merritt.
Connie, from reading these letters, what I've read of them, it doesn't sound like it was just a casual relationship between you two. I don't know whether or not before he got out of prison that you had any relationship, but it doesn't sound like from reading them that when he got out that it was just, you were just totally ignored him at that point.
I did not see him until...
Listen, Connie, you don't have to tell me anything, but don't you tell me any lies.
I'm not telling you no lies. I'm telling you the truth.
Okay, go ahead. Go on with what you was going to say.
I didn't see Frankie until it was March when he came to Willie's house, and I went over there, and then Merritt had been drinking that night, and I took all the kids, and we went over to Willie's, and Frankie was there, and his sister wanted some milk, so I went up to the store and I got some milk, and then Frankie was with me, and with the kids, and Willie came up and said that Merritt was outside, out in the woods with a shotgun, and I said, Willie, I can't go back there, and so I gave Willie the milk, and then I left town.
Where'd you go?
I went to Zolfo Springs.
Who took you?
I did.
Nobody took you?
No.
Frankie didn't take you?
No.
All right, when did you get together with Frankie then?
Frankie was with me when I left.
So Frankie went to Zolfo Springs with you?
Uh-huh.
So he took you over there then, Connie?
No, I took myself.
But he went with you at this point. What got Merritt upset at this point where he was out in the woods with a shotgun? Or would have been out in the woods with a shotgun? What upset him at this point?
Nothing upset him.
Connie, he just doesn't just happen like this for no reason.
He always just asked all his friends. He would always just go on the spur of the moment. If he felt like going hunting, he would go hunting.
Connie, why did you feel like you couldn't go back to the house then?
I don't understand you.
Well, you said that Willie said he was out in the woods with a shotgun.
Yeah, Willie said he was out in the woods waiting for me and Frankie to come back to the house.
All right. Why would Merritt be waiting for you? What happened that he was waiting for you and Frankie to come back?
I don't know.
Something must have happened. What was it?
Nothing happened.
Well, why was you afraid then, if nothing happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Did Frankie ever talk about doing anything to Merritt?
No. Frankie said that he wasn't going to interfere on what I wanted, and he wanted me to be happy, he said. And if I wanted to go move back home, and if that's what it took for me to be happy, then he would understand, and he left it up to me. And he told Merritt that he wasn't telling me what to do, and that he was leaving it up to me.
Now, multiple people who were interviewed said that Merritt Wheeler was known to come to the door in his underwear. One witness even went so far to say he had no problem standing in his front yard, clad only in his underwear, and talking to you for 10 or 15 minutes. This led police to believe that whoever had killed Merritt may have come to the door that night, or perhaps even lured him outside, and that's why he was only found in his underwear. Multiple neighbors were interviewed. Ronnie Dryman, a longtime friend of Merritt and Connie, said that a couple weeks prior to Merritt's death was the first time he met Frankie Lamar, and he was introduced to him by Merritt as Connie's boyfriend. He also recalled an incident where Merritt had beat Connie's brother Pete with a belt a few weeks before the homicide, because Merritt found out that Pete had given his 15-year-old son marijuana. After that, Merritt forbid Pete from being on his property or anywhere around his family. Ronnie also said that he didn't believe Merritt would go hunting at night with a gun, and he certainly wouldn't go hog hunting without his dog. Ronnie also claimed to have heard yelling coming from the area of the Wheelers' house the night that Merritt was killed, but at the time he just didn't think much of it because they did party a lot over there. Another neighbor named Emmett Faircloth also recalled being awakened that night by what he described as a distressing sound around 2 a.m. that seemed to be coming from the Wheeler residence. Perry Hoff, Merritt's employer, told police that he thought Connie's hunting story was hogwash. He had spoken to Merritt that night around 9:15, and he said he sounded tired and he didn't feel well. He mentioned nothing about going hunting. What time did Merritt get home from work on Monday?
Let's see. 6:30, because Barb and David, they came over about...
Bob and David?
Barbara and David Perry.
Okay. What time did they come?
Oh, it was after dark. It was 7:30. And then his mom called and was asking him about his number on his license or something, and then after he got done talking to her, he ate supper, and then he sat there talking to David.
Okay, so how long did Barbara and David stay?
I think they stayed till about 8 or 8:30. And then after David and Barbara left, Harry called, Merritt's boss, and Merritt told him that he wanted him on the job at 7. He said that he ought to go over to David Perry's and get his tools, and that he let David Perry borrow him, and so he went over there to get his tools.
All right.
And then he went over there, and while he was still over there, Willie came back, and he dropped off his daughter, and then he said good night and everything, and then, I went outside and I met her, and then Willie left, and then Merritt came back about 5 minutes after that, and he said that David had given him some sort of soft-shell turtles, and he didn't want Willie to know that he gave them to him because they were commercial fishing and selling them, and So he drove that box out to the shed. And then and Merritt put the turtles in there, and then he went inside and we sat down, and we were talking about he said that he got me some dresses, and he said that he thought that this one would look real nice for me to get baptized in, and he said that he wanted to get his camper fixed so he can go camping, and we were talking about the divorce papers. We were talking about the divorce papers. We got on the subject of, well, I asked him, I said, Merritt, I said, in my divorce papers, there was this thing saying, and I agreed to everything that was on the paper, and he said he wanted to look at it, and he looked at the papers, and he said, well, he didn't remember reading that, and he says they must have put those papers in, after he signed the divorce papers, and he says, well, see, what I wanted them to take, he said he wanted me to take my name off the land and give it to him, and I told him, I wrote to him, and I called his lawyer and told his lawyer that I wanted to take my name off the land and put it in my name, and his lawyer said that he'd reply to Merritt about it, and then Merritt couldn't remember getting a paper or talking to the lawyer or anything first, and then Merritt said, oh yeah, I remember, and I told him no, because maybe later on would decide to hand the land over to you, and he said, I said, why? And he said, I just didn't want you to, getting it in your name. He didn't want me getting it in my name, and then not wanting to live here, and then selling the property. And I said, because, well, I think sooner or later we should put it in all the kids' names. And he said, yes, we would put them in all of their names once we got it paid for. And we were talking about the future, and he said that he was happy that we started going to church, and we should have started long ago. And then we went to bed, and first he said he was going hunting, and then I went to the bedroom, and then he came in and he was sitting on the bed, and he says he wanted to make love, and so we made love, and then he said he was going to go hunting, and I said, what time you going to be back? And he said he didn't know, and I said okay, and then I went to sleep. And
After you all talked, and after he came back, did he clean those turtles?
no, they were still on the box.
All right. So you say he came back from Perry's with the turtles, and then you all sit down and you discuss the divorce, all right? And then you got up and you went to bed. Do you know what time this would have been?
Oh, it was about 10, quarter to 11, and maybe, and then he got up and he left about
All right, wait, now I want to know something, and I want you to be truthful here. What did you all argue about that night?
We didn't argue about nothing.
There's something that upset him, that he got up and left. Did you all have some discussion about your sex life at this point after you made love? I mean...
No. I mean, once I came back, our sex life seemed to be better. I don't know why.
Well, then what made Merritt get up and leave? There's something that made him get up and leave, and you gotta be honest.
I am honest.
Connie, there's something that made him get up out of that bed all of a sudden and leave. Because he'd already told someone earlier that night that he wasn't going hunting, that he wouldn't go. Somebody asked him to go, and he didn't want to go hunting, and then, all of a sudden he gets up and goes. Let's go back to Monday a minute, and Monday night, after you all had your sex and he got up, what did he put on? Did he get dressed?
He got dressed. He put on a pair of blue jeans and an undershirt.
A t-shirt or a regular undershirt?
A t-shirt.
Okay.
And his boots, and
what kind of boots were they?
They was black boots, and they tied up.
Okay.
And then he went out of the bedroom.
How about his shirt? What type of shirt did he have? Did he have his shirt on over his t-shirt or what?
I think he took a shirt, but I don't know what shirt he took.
But you're saying that the shirt I showed you last night wasn't the shirt?
I never seen that shirt before. So let's talk about the shirt. The shirt in question was found at the scene where Merritt's truck was located, and it's described as, quote, long-sleeved shirt, parentheses, army, green with print, containing bloodstains. That shirt was shown to Frankie Lamar's ex-employer at the gas station in town, where he'd worked before being fired, and his ex-employer confirmed that it was Frankie's shirt. He told investigators that Merritt's wife would come to see Frankie at work often, and he once observed them kissing. A co-worker of Frankie's, named Charles Welch, also confirmed that he had seen him wearing that shirt. In addition to people at Frankie's former place of employment, another shirt witness was a clerk at the local grocery store, Tinsley's Groceries. She had allegedly identified the shirt as Frankie's. She remembered that he had come into the store to cash a check a few days before the murder. Only one witness attributed that shirt to someone else. Carolyn Ripa, who was married to Willie Lamar, Frankie's dad, thought it belonged to Pete Dool, Connie's brother. Here's Deputy Dan interviewing Frankie Lamar.
I understand y'all left the day or the night that Merritt was supposedly waiting out in the woods with a shotgun. Prior to that, how long did you and Connie live together?
About 6 months.
All right, that was prior to you leaving and going up to Plant City?
No, not really.
Y'all lived together 6 months after you went to Plant City or before?
After. The night we were informed that, by her brother, this is what may have been kept on me, or maybe, but that Pete had went and told my dad that somebody's out there with a shotgun and was going to shoot us. Well, naturally, I like living myself, and so I said, well, I'm going to get out of here. And Connie said she wanted to leave too, and I said, I don't blame you, and we left. And then sometime we came back and brought the kids back, and so she gave the kids back to him, and later on she said they was going to church. And
The question, Frankie, is how long did y'all live together prior to leaving Arcadia?
I said about 6 months.
Okay, where'd y'all live together at?
Wauchula.
Okay, did you ever live together over at Willie's?
Well, no, I couldn't rightly say we lived there.
Did y'all stay together over there? Sleep together over there?
As in shacking? No. As far as I was concerned,
Where'd you stay when y'all came back?
oh, yeah, I mean, we both did live in that house, yeah.
But you're saying you didn't sleep together.
No.
You slept in separate rooms?
Right.
Separate bedrooms?
Yeah, separate rooms. I was,
How about when Carol was still there, before she left Willie? Were y'all living together? Sleeping together?
well, we played cards together,
Where was she living at?
She was living at home.
She was still living with Merritt.
Right, but I mean, she'd come over and at night or something like that, and me and my dad and Carol, we'd sit around and play cards.
While she was still living with Merritt.
Merritt knew that, I didn't get suspected or nothing, but he's a heavy drinker there, and Connie's brother Pete, he told Merritt that me and Connie was going to bed with each other and stuff like that, and so I don't know, I guess he just thought it was some crap, and that's what it all amounted to, crap, so...
So what you're saying is it wouldn't have been unusual while Merritt was at work that y'all got together and played cards.
Right, that wouldn't have been unusual, because I was working myself. I worked in the daytime also.
What about the day that you got your license on the 24th?
Uh-huh.
Did she bring you up to the station to get your paycheck?
Yes, she did.
And what did you do from there?
What'd I do from there?
Yeah, after you picked up your paycheck, what'd y'all do?
I went back to the house, and she went back home, and she said she had to do some laundry or something or other.
You went directly from the station back to your house. You didn't go to Tinsley's to cash your check.
Pardon me?
You didn't go to Tinsley's to cash your check. Do you wear sunglasses?
No, sir.
You don't wear sunglasses. You ain't never worn...
Well, now, I do, yeah.
What kind of sunglasses do you wear?
I got 'em out in the car. You can go look at 'em if you want.
When you picked up your paycheck at the station, you didn't go cash it at Tinsley's?
Well, yeah, I had to stop, and I bought me some dog food and stuff.
Okay, you did stop and cash the paycheck.
Yeah, I also bought some dog food and stuff.
So you're saying you did stop?
Yeah, I did stop, and I got a beer at the grocery store. I don't know the name of it.
So what, you forgot about that?
Pardon me?
Did you forget about that?
No, I didn't forget about it. I mean, you asked me if I cashed a check, and I remember now.
Frankie, do you remember what clothes you were wearing the day you cashed your paycheck?
Maybe I was wearing a shirt that I got at well, let's see. It's a long sleeve shirt, I think, a rayon shirt. I got it at the flea market.
Do you know what color it is?
It's got flowers on it, I think. I think it was blue. And then I had on some brown pants.
Wait a minute, what color was the pants?
I think I had Levi's on. I'm not sure, I mean, when I get dressed, I
Well,
don't...
you'd know the difference between Levi's and dress pants, wouldn't you?
Well, it was either one of those two, 'cause I ain't got but one pair of dress pants.
What color are they?
Brown.
And the shirt, did it have flowers on it?
Yeah, I got several shirts with flowers on it, That's just the kind of shirts I wear. I got 'em at the flea market.
Feels something like silk?
Yeah, I guess.
You say you buy them at the flea market.
Yeah, I got about 14 of 'em one time for about $6 each at the flea market.
Was that the shirt you were wearing?
No, I don't wear a shirt like that.
You ain't never seen that shirt before?
Not that type.
Frankie, is this your shirt?
No.
You've never worn this shirt before?
Nope. Never seen it before.
You've never worn it, never seen it. It's rayon.
Well, that's not my style. That ain't my type.
Did you ever talk to the people that you work with or brag around work that you were living with Connie right across the street from her old man?
No, well, yeah, okay. There's people like Bill, I'm sure you know who he is. He said something like, I'd be afraid to live across the street from there. And I said, why should I? I said, me and him's good friends. He said, well, he's going to pull your eyeballs out. And then he said something about when he catches Pete, he's going to break his arms or something. And I said, Merritt caught me out in the store one day and we talked like grown men. And even one day he came over to the house and he called me all kinds of names trying to get me outside. And I wouldn't go out there, And so that night he called me on the phone and he talked about it. And I told him all what was said, and it makes sense now. Come to find out, it all comes back to Pete, saying that he told the mailman he had a shotgun with him in the bushes.
Okay, but without slipping back into the period of time that Merritt and Connie were getting back together, let's date back 6 months prior when you and Connie were living together, okay? What was your and Merritt's relationship then?
Well, I didn't rightly know who the man was, I didn't. I met him one time. And as a matter of fact, he showed me how to tan a hide one time, long time ago, and we talked about it. And I told him I ain't gonna disrespect you, I was in prison, and I wrote to your old lady, and, I said I was lonely, and you're in there for years and years, and you're gonna write to a woman. And talk all kinds of crap to her and stuff about what's. But he understood.
Oh, he understood.
Yeah, he understood.
Did he tell you that he understood, Frankie?
Yeah, he told me he understood.
I can't understand it.
He said there wasn't no hard feelings.
Did Pete come over and see you one day after Merritt was killed?
No, sir.
So you haven't seen Pete since Merritt was killed?
No, sir. I saw him before he got killed.
You know we have Pete in jail, right?
Who does?
You and he were pretty good pals?
No, we sure wasn't. 'Cause the reason I saw him that day was 'cause I was gonna whip his ass. I heard that he stole my bulldog back after I bought it from him. And he said he didn't do it. 'Cause when I went over there, it was on Saturday, I believe, and I was talking to Bill Hagee. 'Cause I wanted to see what it was like over there, 'cause I heard a lot about it, and I wanted to see if that bulldog was around there. So I walked up there, and
You
Pete...
stopped in to see Bill to buy some grass from him.
Huh?
You stopped in to see Bill to buy some grass from him, didn't you? Let's be honest about it. That's what you told the state's attorney investigator.
Well, yeah, to see if he had any.
Not to see what it looked like. You stopped to buy some grass.
No, 'cause I wanted to check him out and see what he looked like, 'cause I heard a lot about him, and so I was about done. I didn't even know Pete was standing there. And Pete popped up and he said, what are you doing, Frankie? And I said, I recognized him and I said, not much,
You and Pete, you ever do much together?
Sure didn't. I don't know him that good.
Come on. As long as you went with Connie, you didn't know him that good?
No, I only seen him before me and Connie met.
Pete didn't come over to your dad's much?
I think he come over there twice the whole time, and that was it.
Frankie, are you in love with Connie?
Well, I had a feeling for her at one time, yeah, I won't lie to you about it.
Did you love her?
I thought I did.
What changed?
The whole situation,
You mean about Merritt being killed?
No, the whole situation, when I was lying with her, shacking with her, whatever. She had kids, and a lot of times she'd lay down at night and just cry, and I'd ask her, I'd say, what's wrong, honey? And she'd say, I miss the kids. And I said, well, why don't you go back home? And she'd say, I don't know if Merritt will have me. And, it looked to me like she was trying to use me for something, and to get by or something like that. So somebody to lean on, I guess, and talk to, because she could never talk to Merritt, and she couldn't trust her brother because he and Merritt were always fighting, and Pete, they always fighting. And
all right, Frankie. I'm going to ask you again. Have you ever seen this shirt?
No, sir.
Is it your shirt?
No, sir.
Have you ever worn this shirt?
No, sir.
At any time, have you ever been in contact with this shirt?
No, sir.
Okay. Now I'm going to tell you what facts are facts, Frankie. October the 24th. You did not go to work. You requested the day before to be off to go get your driver's license.
Correct.
They called a man in to work for you.
Correct.
Connie brought you up there that day to pick up your paycheck.
Correct.
You picked up your paycheck. There at the station. Connie was present with you.
Correct.
You took your paycheck, and you asked her to take you to Tinsley's to get some stuff.
Right.
She dropped you off at Tinsley's, and she waited out in the car, and you went inside, you cashed your check, you got your picture taken, and you bought groceries.
Correct.
Did you buy cigarettes when you got your check cashed?
Yes, sir. A pack of Marlboros.
Did you stand there and count your money?
Yes, sir.
Did you forget your change? Your loose change, quarters, nickels? Did you leave it in that little thing? Somebody had to tell you to come get it?
Yeah, they got that little machine there and they dropped the change out because I'm not used to that machine.
But you walked off and you were counting your bills.
Right, and now I counted it right there in front of the...
No, you moved away. You went off to the side. I'm going to tell you like it is, Frankie. I got the picture of you getting your check cashed. And you want to know what shirt you was wearing? Seeing as you don't really remember?
Tell me.
That shirt? Right there.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe it? Well, I got the picture. I got 4 eyewitnesses that identified you in that shirt. Not no red shirt, not no other plain shirt, not no other color, not no other design, Frankie. That shirt.
I disagree.
Do you feel I'm not telling you the truth about that picture?
Yeah, if you said I had that shirt on.
Do you recognize that guy right there?
Bring it up here closer. Yeah, that's me, uh-huh.
That's your check above your head there. And you were wearing these sunglasses.
I was wearing them sunglasses,
At least that part of the picture is correct. You're wearing the sunglasses.
Right.
Okay, so that much of the photograph is correct, right?
No, I ain't saying that. I said that part. I mean, the photograph is correct, you know. I ain't seen the whole photograph.
Okay, so she's correct on you wearing the sunglasses.
Right.
Okay.
But she said I had that shirt on, and that's not correct.
Oh, it's not. Why is that particular part of her statement incorrect?
I mean, listen, I know you're trying to do. You're trying to say that's my shirt, and I know that's not my shirt.
We have looked and observed and gone over that picture with a magnifying glass.
Well, you know what you ought to do? You ought to go over my closet with a magnifying glass. How about that? You say I got that shirt on, all I gotta say is, my lawyer's gotta see some evidence. You know what I mean?
Frankie, why do you think we're so interested in this shirt?
Listen, I'm sure you people know what you're doing. You know what I mean, but...
Well, I'm sure glad to hear you say that. Because you've been sitting here giving me the impression that you think I'm an idiot.
No, but that's the impression that I was getting about that whole shirt situation. Like I'm some kind of idiot, like you think I don't know what's my shirt and what's not my shirt. What you want me to say is that's my shirt. And you're saying that you got pictures. And all I have to say is that's not my shirt. And I ain't never seen it before.
Frankie, I'd be worried about it if somebody had my picture with this shirt on.
Well, I don't think you got a picture of me in that shirt.
Here's the biggest problem with how Deputy Dan fixated on this shirt. He repeatedly lied to these witnesses about it. He stated over and over that he had identified the owner of the shirt and that they had a picture of the shirt taken at Tinsley's IGA store. But we learn later in the report, when the case is taken over by other investigators, and after Deputy Dan is fired, that none of that was true. In September of 2005, the current investigator who was working on it at that time contacted Deputy Dan to see what he remembered from his investigation. The report states, quote, former Deputy Danny 2 recalled they had a photograph from Tinsley's IGA grocery store of Frank wearing a similar shirt to the one found at the crime scene. Green, long sleeve, with fanged animal and decorative balls. 2 said the picture was not clear enough and he was never able to establish, beyond a reasonable doubt, that was the same shirt. But that shirt was mentioned another time by a witness that crossed paths with Connie's brother Pete in jail not too long after the murder. And old Pete, well, he had a very interesting story to tell to this inmate, rife with details about the murder of Merritt Wheeler. Later, this witness would write down all those details in a letter And in March of 1981, only 5 months after the murder, he would pop that letter into an envelope and mail it to the Desoto County Sheriff's Department. This witness was named Neil Berg, and he was born in Michigan, but at the time, he was an inmate at Doctors Inlet Road Prison in Doctors Inlet, Florida. Investigators were able to confirm that Pete Duell and Neil Berg were incarcerated on the date in question and had shared a cell for a few days at this facility. So let's get right to that letter.
While waiting for transfer at Lake Butler, Florida Receiving Medical Center for the Department of Corrections, I ran across an inmate that I had known since I first came into the prison system, who was back on a new sentence. While talking to this inmate, Pete Duell, he got to talking about this individual who he says is Indian and who threatened to do great harm to him, Pete. So he ran down what happened, and I don't know if he was just running a story down to me or not, but he detailed what happened that Sunday night and him being responsible for Merritt Wheeler's death. It happened Sunday night, approximately 4 or 5 months ago. There's reason to believe he wasn't by himself, and enticed Merritt to come out of the house to investigate some noises around his truck. But he came out in shorts, and at that time he was hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat, was put in the truck, drove to the point in the river in which he was taken out, and put in the river, or canal, face down. Pete, at some point, put a motorcycle in the back of the truck, then went to Fort Myers. Claims he stole the bike from and rode it back to Naples, round trip. Took 3 or 4 hours. T-shirt was found in the truck full of blood. T-shirt belonged to Frank Lamar, who was going with Pete's sister at times. Merritt threatened to hurt Pete seriously because of bad past relations, and Pete running up a large phone bill to his number. Pete claims he was drunk and on drugs when this happened. Frank Lamar knows about this but is not supposed to know everything. Pete thinks he suspects him. The reason Merritt was found in his shorts was because this is the way he came out of the house. Things that Pete told me gave me the impression that there was someone else with him, Merritt being a big man and having the motorcycle in the back of the truck. It was a 750 Kawasaki, stolen that same night from Fort Myers.
What nationality was Merritt?
I would say Indian.
Indian. In your mind, who do you think killed Merritt Wheeler?
Pete Duell and Connie Wheeler.
Do you think there was anybody else involved?
No.
I don't.
In her very first interview after Merritt was found dead, his wife Connie was asked what he was wearing when he left the house that night. Connie said he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and she described the boots that he put on as black that tie up. During one of his interviews, in later years, Frankie Lamar positively ID'd a pair of boots from a picture shown to him by investigators, boots that were recovered from a makeshift campsite in the neighborhood, and that campsite was known to be used by Pete Duell, Connie's brother. Frankie said that the boots were the same ones that Pete had in his tent. The DeSoto County Sheriff's evidence report describes the boots being shown to witnesses for identification as brown boots, cowboy style. So not boots that you tie up, like Connie described him leaving the house in. Neighbor Ava Ford, her boys were the ones who found those boots.
My boys, which was at the age of probably 13, 14, found in adjacent properties from my house, found where Pete was hiding out, a pair of cowboy boots and a pocket knife, and brought them home. And I knew it was Merritt's pocket knife and boots. Knowing Merritt personally, I had seen him clean many a gopher and wild animal with the pocket knife prior to that.
Now I remember an officer walked in there and we had to go with him to where we found the boots and stuff at. They were like slip-on work boots, like a leather, not a cheap boot, like a regular man's work boot.
wasn't the real pointed toe dress style.
No, it was not a dress boot. It was a work style boot. Just like a leather work boot, like a brown leather work boot.
Was there anything particular about them struck you funny when you found them? Do you remember anything about them?
They had blood on them. Then we found a big knife with them, and then we got kind of worried.
In later years, Pete would admit to staying at that campsite and having those boots. He said he took them from Merritt's house after his murder, although Connie said she had not seen her brother Pete during that time frame. The law was over there the other night looking for Pete, you know. I don't know who it was, because they come over to Connie and Merritt's house, and Connie said she hadn't seen him. Pete had been seen around the neighborhood that week, you know, walking around the dirt road and stuff like that, because they go over to Connie's, and they asked her, well, do you know him? And she said, yeah, that's my brother. And they said, well, you should know where he's at then. And she said, no, sir, I don't, because me and my husband, we ain't been too long back together, and everything like that. And so she said, why don't you try some of his friends, like old Bill Hagan, around over there, you know? So the sheriff or whoever went around there. And old Bill Hagan, he got real mad about that. And Pete got mad too, because they thought Connie had called the law on him.
Pete was there when the law went?
No, sir, but he's supposed to have been in there in town that day, you know, and the law went around there. And that's what he said. He said he thought Connie called the law on him. So this section here is important to me because it seems to point to an area of motive where Pete's concerned. Based on Frankie's story, if true, this incident occurred on Saturday, right before Merritt was killed. Law enforcement was looking for Pete because he had a violation of probation warrant at the time. And this is when Merritt is still alive, because according to Frankie, Connie says, me and my husband ain't been back together too long. So when the cops come to her house looking for her brother, Connie says she doesn't know where he is, but she sends them over to Bill Hagan's house, where she and likely everyone in the neighborhood not only knows that Pete hangs out, but also where Bill, the local pot dealer, is very likely to either have pot on the premises at the time or, shall we say, be currently transacting. So this pisses off both Pete and Bill Hagan, according to Frankie. And I think Frankie also does a fairly good job of articulating how Pete stirred up all that trouble with Merritt and Connie, talking in his ear about her and Frankie cheating, and then going across the street and telling Willie Lamar and his wife that Merritt was out in the bushes with a shotgun, waiting to shoot him. They both say that's what caused them to leave town. And it might be true, because both Connie and Frankie, they had it pretty good right there where they were, sneaking around on the side. After they left, and they took the kids with them for a short time, they ended up bringing them back to Merritt fairly soon, because they weren't able to feed them, according to Merritt's oldest son. That sounds like a money situation to me, at least in part. And then the two ended up working together on a chicken farm, which, to be fair, probably was not all that glamorous. Yeah, I think Frankie and Connie learned pretty quick that being out on their own and having to make money was a lot harder than hanging out in Arcadia, letting Merritt make the paycheck while they snuck around and canoodled behind his back. Once Connie was back and safely ensconced in her home with her husband and his decent-paying job, even if she had plans to continue seeing Frankie on the side, it couldn't have been lost on her that her brother Pete, in some ways, was making her life a whole lot more difficult than it needed to be. And since Pete was the one stirring that pot between Frankie and Willie and Connie and Merritt, and had just been tossed out on his ass by his brother-in-law, Pete himself knew that what he was trying to do wasn't working. He may have been staying with Bill Hagan for a while, but as soon as the law started looking for him there, he didn't have that place to stay either. And now he's found himself over there living in a tent in the palmetto bushes hiding from the law, while Frankie and Connie are back in their respective homes, eating in kitchens and availing themselves of, things like running water and bathroom facilities. And to rub salt in the wound, when Frankie's over at Bill Hagan's on Saturday, telling Pete that, no, actually, Merritt didn't beat my ass for shacking up with his wife. We're friends now. Yet Merritt had not spared the rod where Pete was concerned, for what I'm sure he considered much more minor infractions. Well, I can see where there would be some jealousy and resentment brewing for old Pete right about then. And after he gets a whiff of his sister sending the law over to his buddy the pot dealer's house looking for him, that resentment may have just heated up well past a rolling boil.
You know, Pete's actually the one that caused a lot of the trouble between all this stuff, starting with me and Connie, having to leave town and everything. 'Cause Pete was telling Merritt a bunch of lies and shit, and Merritt was already been drinking. Then he went over there and told Dad that Merritt was laying in the bushes, gonna shoot us with a shotgun. And I mean, I couldn't understand why. And I wasn't about to die or nothing, you know? I like living. And I know, Merritt's just about crazy enough to shoot someone. If he had a reason, you know?
Alright, so Paul Ledbetter's the one who said he had a bullet with Merritt's name on it, okay?
Well, I'll tell you what. 'Cause I did this before, and you can ask the police department over there in Sebring. I'm willing to help you find out if they had anything to do with this. I'm willing to help you find out, 'cause I've had bugs put on me before, you know, and I helped the law out. And I'll go over there and talk to them.
And in case you missed that, my friends, was Frankie Lamar offering to wear a wire and go back over and chat with them boys at Bill Hagen's house to see if he could find out if any of them had anything to do with Merritt's murder.
Well, I'd sure like to know what they was doing on Monday night.
I can find out, maybe.
Tell me. Not to get you to cause any problems or nothing, but when you was over there and you asked Hagen for some dope and Pete was there, did he sell you some?
Nah, he told me that, well, that's when I was saying when the law done walked in, or Connie sent the law over there, and he didn't appreciate that worth a damn.
Bill said Connie was the one that sent the law over there?
Yeah, Connie sent the law over there. And he said Pete ain't here. And I ain't seen him or nothing like that. But her and her husband went back together and everything, and she said I hadn't seen Pete, but you might ought to go over there and check on his friend, Bill Hagen. And that's when he went around there. And Bill told me he said he had some roaches and stuff laying around or something.
Wait, they think Connie done that? Or they thought Merritt done that?
Well, Pete thought Connie done it. To start with, you know.
Connie?
Yeah, Connie.
Connie Wheeler.
Yeah, Merritt's wife, that's what I'm trying to tell you. 'Cause the law went over to their house.
So they think Connie put Bobby on him.
That's right, that's the way they tell it.
Well, they missed that one, didn't they?
I think the evidence is clear that Merritt Wheeler was pissed at both Frankie and Pete, and things with both men had come to a head the weekend before he was killed. I think that fact is what makes this story a bit muddy for investigators, and might play into why the case has never been resolved. Apparently nobody saw someone drive Merritt Wheeler's truck down his driveway with him bleeding inside, but that is most certainly the working theory here. Who is the question? And we've got a couple good suspects. Connie Wheeler's boyfriend, Frankie Lamar, who lived basically across the street, and her brother, who was apparently living in a tent on property nearby. It's unclear what any of the investigators believed regarding Frankie and Pete working together, but it does appear that the later investigators believe that Connie was in collusion with her brother Pete, at least as far as after the fact, lying and covering up. That hunting story was likely an afterthought, and it came apart due to a few things. 1, where Merritt was left. 2, the fact that he went at all, given he wasn't feeling well. And 3, Bill Sane asking Merritt to go hunting that evening and Merritt declining. Which I don't think Connie knew about until Deputy Dan told her that little detail. She said in her interview that Bill never came inside the house. He and Merritt talked outside. If she gave that story as a cover-up, it appears that she did so without realizing that her husband had already turned down an offer to go hunting. But she also lied in that very first interview when State Attorney Kurt Siver asked her if Merritt was having any problems with anyone, or anyone had any problems with him. She said no, and we know that's a lie, because he was certainly having problems with her brother Pete. He had repeatedly stole from Merritt, and he had fabricated an entire story about Merritt being outside with a gun, which, at least in part, led to his wife leaving town with her boyfriend. And right before the murder, Merritt had banished Pete from their house. Yet Connie never mentioned any of this to police. She was clearly covering for her brother.
Yeah, there was a grudge between Daddy and Pete. can tell you how this happened. Daddy could come home on a Friday, 4 weeks paycheck. His wallet come up missing.
Oh, wow.
And who else in the house would want to take Daddy's money besides Pete?
Was that right around the time of the murder, or months before, or what?
Prior, several. I can't pinpoint how many days or maybe several months, 2 months, 3 months. I can't really pinpoint this time. This is where the grudge has started, when this wallet come up missing.
Well, also there's a note in the report that Pete stole your dad's truck.
He could have had, but if he'd done that, I wouldn't have known nothing about it.
And that's...
The Daddy didn't file no report or tell me nothing that, hey, Daddy had only had this truck just for a couple of weeks.
Oh, it was new. Okay.
It was new to Daddy. It was a used truck, but
right.
It was to him.
Yeah. Well, he did. There were neighbors that knew about the truck being stolen and your father beating Pete's ass because of it. But he probably didn't report it to police. You know, it was only learned later.
Daddy said this like Daddy's paycheck being gone. One time with Daddy, went to a dump and we took a chair to a dump, a landfill. Daddy says, I must see something. He pulls his knife out and he cuts his chair up and he finds his wallet. There was a whole amount of payroll still in it.
Wow.
I remember him coming off the ground smiling. That didn't take away that grudge that he put on Pete for accusing Pete of stealing his money.
Well, that's very interesting because if he found it, then obviously Pete didn't take it, but Pete knew that he had been unjustly accused, so that would have been more things that pissed him off. But Pete was known to steal from him and steal from everybody in the neighborhood. So
right.
What do you expect when you steal from people? It's hard for me to imagine any scenario in which Connie Wheeler is not involved, or at least has knowledge after the fact. And that is mainly based upon Merritt's state of undress, and the fact that nobody that police spoke with believed her story about him going hunting. Not a single person.
I knew when she said he went hunting, she was lying because he was too tired and sick, he didn't feel good, and that he didn't go hunting. That was not a good story.
Did Pete also work for you at the time?
At the time he did.
Okay. After this happened,
I never seen him again.
So he never showed up for work
No,
after this?
He never come back to work.
Did Pete ever show back up to get his check?
Not that I can remember.
In the probable cause information submitted in 2016, among the list was this statement, quote, following the murder, a pair of boots were located that belonged to the victim at Pete Dool's campsite. There was a lot of blood on the inside of the boots, which would mean that Pete Dool's assertion that he took those boots from the Wheeler house after the homicide is absolutely a lie. Investigators had Pete himself on jail phone calls admitting to telling another inmate about killing Merritt. It's not a stretch to think that Pete Dool, who was living in the woods nearby, might be watching the house and waited until darkness fell on Arcadia that night, until he thought everyone was in bed, and grabbed one of his buddies, maybe one of those old boys that were up there that Saturday, that day at Bill Hagen's, and they made their way up that driveway and approached Merritt's truck. And then they did something to get his attention. Maybe they banged on something, or made just enough noise to get him outside. You can see it now too, can't you? Merritt stepping outside in his underwear, his eyes adjusting to the light. Maybe he yelled out, "Who's there?" as he walked slowly toward his truck. And then he's hit from behind. Maybe he's able to get a few of those distressing sounds out, the ones that the neighbors said they heard that night, before he was hit again. And then everything went dark. Merritt Wheeler is buried in the Oak Ridge Cemetery in Arcadia, Florida. The epitaph on his grave reads, "A good man who loved Florida wildlife." I covered this case because I think there are some people out there who have information that could help this good man get the justice that he deserves, and maybe help answer some questions for the people who still want to know what happened. If you have any information about the murder of Merritt Wheeler, please contact the Desoto County Sheriff's Office at 863-993-4700, or you can call the Southwest Florida Crime Stoppers at 1-800-780-TIPS. If you are a member of law enforcement or a family, friend, interested party who has a case that you think might be a good fit for the Down and Away podcast, you can contact me at deckerjenny@gmail.com. That's DECKERJENI@gmail.com. If you are interested in fiction, you should check out the Morneau podcast from my Detective Dex Morneau crime series. I do some of the narration on that, and there will be about 70 episodes in that series total. Both Down and Away and the Morneau podcast can be found wherever you listen to podcasts.